Okay, it being 6 o'clock, this is Robert Depper, the Chair of the Burlington Police Commission. I'm going to go ahead and call us to order. I'll need to do a roll call and a determination of quorum first. Commissioners, as I call your name, please indicate whether or not you are here for the record, or I will start with online. Commissioner Cox, I see you are here.
Here.
Okay. Commissioner Genorio, I see you are here.
Here.
Commissioner Paul, I see you are here.
I am here, and Commissioner Finneran is looking for the link.
Okay.
So she is making an effort to
Get on? Okay.
I'm actually just going to send it to her.
Okay, very well. We'll hold on for just a second while she gets on.
She just got it. There she is.
There she is.
Okay. That was speedy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner Paul. Commissioner Finneran, can you indicate here, please?
Here, sorry.
Excellent, thank you. No, not at all. All right, we do appear to have a quorum. And our first item of business are additions or modifications to the agenda. Are there any additions or modifications to last month's agenda? Hearing none, I would move that we adopt last month's agenda in toto. Do I hear a second?
Excuse me, I'm not really sure I understand what you mean by last month's.
So our last meeting, the agenda minutes from the last
Oh, the
meeting?
minutes. I thought you
Yes,
said
ma'am.
the agenda.
No, I meant the agenda minutes.
Okay. No, I do have an amendment to the minutes.
Okay,
So sorry about that.
that's okay.
So I, people can certainly correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that the website change and the language discussion, that we voted on that.
I thought we did too.
Right. So it says proposed
Okay.
under the minutes.
Did you,
And
then you,
that's item 5.3. Should be a motion was made, and then what the vote was on that. I thought that there also was a fairly lengthy discussion on the grievance procedure, because that was also information that Anthony had given us. I think in general, the minutes should be a little bit more detailed, if we can possibly do that.
okay, and so I just want to make, is there anything else?
Just those two things.
Okay, so just to summarize, and please correct me if I'm wrong, so you wanted to move to amend the minutes from last month's meeting to include a vote on the website materials. I believe that vote was in the affirmative.
Right, it's 5.3.
Okay, so a modification to 5.3 and vote on the affirmative for the website.
I don't have any language, but I'm sure we can come up with something that's amenable.
What, for the modification?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest, just that
Yeah.
there was a vote in the affirmative for the website modifications as discussed. And then the second part of that was, I'm sorry, can you repeat the second part?
I thought that there was, 5.2 just says there's a grievance procedure discussion. And I think for the benefit of the public, we should really go a little beyond that there was a discussion and have the minutes note what the discussion was.
Okay, and as I recall, and please correct me if I'm wrong, as I recall, we did in fact vote on some
Yes.
grievance procedure.
Yes.
We had like an amendment or two.
Yes.
And so, so as I understand it, and just to summarize for a motion, to modify 5.3 to indicate that there was a vote in the affirmative on the changes to the website as articulated in the agenda packet of that night. Also, that there was a vote in the affirmative for 5.2 on the grievance procedure with amendments, and to ask that the administrative assistant for the commission modify the minutes to reflect that and to include some additional detail on the substance of the vote and the amendments. Does that work?
Yes, I mean, I think if we are going by Robert's rules, there should be a note that a motion was made by Commissioner X, seconded by Commissioner Y. It was voted, and the vote was unanimous.
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay, very well. I would second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Madam Clerk, Assistant, I'm sorry, I'm not being terribly formal, it's been a long day, but Madam Clerk, if you could please modify the minutes to reflect that vote, we'd much appreciate it, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Now, are there any additions or modifications to tonight's agenda? Okay, hearing none, we will move on. We'll now move to public comment. The public is invited to address the commission. Do we have anyone from the public here, perhaps online, to offer any comment? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the next item of business, the Police Department business, the Chief's report. So, Chief Burke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Depper. My apologies, a little under the weather, so I decided to stay up here at the office. But, thank you for your attention this evening. On the first page of the report, just a brief report out on where the department stands in terms of staffing. So as of today, we have 61 sworn officers employed, 50 are available for duty. We actually have 11 officers on long-term leave or training status. So 6 of those officers are on injury status, 2 FMLA, 2 are pending use of force review by the Attorney General's office, 1 on long-term military orders, and 1 recruit at the basic police academy in Pittsford. All of the officers that are on long-term leave currently are assigned to uniformed services, which is making our ability to staff shifts has been very challenged here throughout the winter. We're also carrying some vacancies on the professional staff side of the house. So our Emergency Communications Center, we did receive and accept a resignation from a emergency communications specialist in the month of February. So we are down to 11 full-time dispatchers. We have vacancies in the Crisis Advocacy Intervention Program in terms of CSLs. We have vacancies with the community service officer role. In the records division, we're fully staffed, and in the ID unit, we're fully staffed. So our recruitment efforts right now are focused on police officers, emergency communication specialists, CSLs, and CSOs. So if anyone knows folks looking for good, stable employment in today's economy, we have a plethora of opportunities for folks. Moving on to page 2, highlight here some of the steps that we've taken, not only as a department, but as a city, in response to some of the immigration enforcement woes that have been going on across the country. I want to be clear that there hasn't been an increased level of immigration enforcement in the city. There are no such efforts on the horizon that we're aware of, but we thought it would be foolish to sit back while things were going on in Minneapolis and in the state of Maine and not have done any preparatory steps. So the first thing we did was coordinate with mutual aid partners, specifically the Vermont State Police and our neighbors at the Winooski Police Department and the South Burlington Police Department, to really assess our regional capabilities, clarify roles and responsibilities, and evaluate the resources that we would have in the event that we needed to contend with either static activism or mobile activism, and the potential for conflict between those exercising First Amendment rights and lawful federal law enforcement operations. DC Young was also able to have a few conversations with affected communities in the state of Maine, and that was important to understand exactly what the operations looked like in those jurisdictions, and those were vastly different than what was going on in Minneapolis, and more like what we have seen on occasion here in Vermont from the ERO agents. So again, just good table setting for us as we think about things that we should be prepared for. We also took time to look at pertinent policy that we have here at the Burlington Police that would kind of guide our work in this arena. First being the fair and impartial policing policy, which all of you understand has a strict prohibition of Burlington Police being involved in any civil immigration matters. Our use of force policy, which is important because the use of force policy has the standard for which Vermont law enforcement officers are held when using force, and that is, it's kind of known as the Graham Plus standard. Not only does the force need to be objectively reasonable, but proportional and necessary. Federal agents are held to a slightly different standard. They simply have an objective, reasonable standard. So, why does this matter to a layperson? A tactic that a federal agent could potentially use when applying force, they could use something that is prohibited by a Vermont law enforcement officer, but it doesn't make the federal action illegal on its face. We also have in the use of force policy, which is a state mandated policy, a duty to intervene and duty to report. So that was good language to reflect upon and how that might intersect with anything that could happen in the community. And then lastly, operation of body worn camera systems. This was of particular importance because there's a provision in the body worn camera policy that technology will not be used to conduct any surveillance of folks exercising their First Amendment rights. But we definitely wanted to kind of drill down on that and understand if we could operate these cameras, if we were in a situation between a federal law enforcement operation and those looking to exercise their First Amendment rights. And we feel as though that based on the policy language that we would in fact operate our body worn cameras anytime that we were interacting with a potential clash between activists and federal agents in the street. And I'll stop there to see if there's any questions. That's quite a bit to digest before I move into how we collaborate with the mayor's office on the executive order that was issued. Okay, hearing none. The mayor, Commissioner Cox, sorry, go ahead.
So this is just maybe just slightly off topic, but I'd seen someplace just in the literature that they have these short flight drones now that are designed for police departments to, if it's like a major kind of incident where there's a lot of moving parts, that they can send up a drone to get an eagle eye view of the scene. But it's designed for, will only operate for a very limited amount of time, and then it comes back down. And I was wondering if you guys had been looking at that at all, because it seems like that might be something that would be useful in a situation like this.
Yes, thank you for that. We do have a drone program here at BPD. We don't necessarily talk about all the different applications that we would use it for from a tactics standpoint, but we do see the value in being able to assess any number of things like we do before major civic events or other areas that we need to secure. The drones are a very valuable tool. So the department worked closely with the mayor's office on the executive order that was released recently. It's rather prescriptive in nature, but it is grounded and consistent with all the department directives that I just previously mentioned. And that was important. So we had, good separation between what could be deemed political in nature in terms of the issuance of the executive order, and then the objective operations of the police department. And I feel comfortable with the language that was included in the mayor's executive order, and appreciate the work that her and her team put into that. Moving on to the remainder of the 2025 data reporting that we'll be doing here this evening. As soon as Jeff, our analyst, signs on, we'll have a report related to arrests in 2025, and then Jeff is still working through the traffic stop data, which we hope to have presented at the March meeting, followed lastly by the use of force data in April. And once again, I know I touched on this last meeting. Typically, this report is done after the first quarter of the year, and once we get a good model of reporting that the commission is happy with, we'll be happy to have this probably in a presentation or two late next or spring of 2027. Parallel to his work on the 2025 reports, Jeff is also working to reestablish the workflows to resume regular data transfers to the data hub. He also has a development as it relates to our weekly log that was posted on our website, but it was done so in a PDF fashion. And as we understood it from the folks over at IT, it takes up a lot of space on the website. So this will be more of a CSV file, something that folks can actually filter and answer questions that they may have about our incident response data. And that should be live this week. Moving on to recruitment. So our social media team has been doing some pretty amazing work with developing content, and you'll see here on our Instagram account, we had two videos, but one in particular that drew 2 million views on our Instagram account and about 4 million views on our Facebook account. And what's important here is that the large percentage of the folks that are engaging with this content are outside of our organization or outside of our follower groups on these two platforms. And we're also starting to see a lot of inquiries as to employment opportunities in the recruitment office. So we know that social media is fertile ground for these efforts in filling not only police officer roles, but potentially emergency communication specialists, CSLs and CSOs. And we hope to have the applications here flowing in the near future. Commissioner Cox?
Yes, sir. I was wondering, some of us have just made a decision not to engage too much with social media currently, but like a lot of us do watch YouTube videos, and I was wondering if I hadn't seen like these fantastic things on YouTube, and they might be there, but could you just make sure that they also post to YouTube?
We sure can. Thank you. And then the last thing I wanted to report on this month is training. We've started this year. Our annual training requirements are laid out in statute. We hadn't had a formal calendar laid out in 2025 and maybe even a couple of years prior to that. This year we started earnestly the first quarter of the year with our scheduled training, so we wouldn't be rushing at the end of the year to try to get this in. This month, the staff has been going through our use of force training, which is mandated every year, minimum 4 hours of use of force training. This includes a comprehensive review of the use of force policy, followed by a practical exercise in the MDTS platform, which is the Monadnock Defensive Tactics System. It's the curriculum that the Vermont Police Academy uses for all basic level certification. So we went through that basic curriculum, which keeps us in compliance with the rules and overarching statutory framework at the Vermont Police Academy. We also spent the second half of that training day running folks through the Integrated Communication Assessment and Tactics program. That is our program that we use for de-escalation training. BPD was actually one of the pilot agencies that led to the development of this program in 2015, and it was led and is still hosted by the Police Executive Research Forum. It's gold standard training in terms of decision-making models and how to contend with folks, particularly those wrestling with a mental health crisis, armed with anything other than a firearm. Being armed with a firearm obviously limits a lot of the different options that the police can bring to bear on those scenarios, but much of our work is in this space with folks that aren't armed with firearms that we do need to contend with, that are either presenting a threat to themselves or others. And I will say the session that I went through with one of the evening shift teams and one of the day shift teams, really thoughtful conversations around the scenarios and the videos that were reviewed, a lot of conversations about how they're actually applying these tactics and thought processes to particularly incidents where we have to take folks into custody on an emergency evaluation warrants, which are simply care orders to bring someone to the hospital for a mental health evaluation. And I was really impressed by how thoughtful this team is and how they use all the resources that we have here to bear to make sure that we're conducting these operations in a way that not only keeps our staff safe, but the suspects safe, as well as the broader community. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that folks have about the Chief's report.
It appears Commissioner Cox has a question.
Yes, Chief, thank you. I was wondering on the ICAT, and I've dug into the ICAT, quite a bit, and I really appreciate very much the power of that in terms of just keeping the community safe and leading to the right result, I think. And I was wondering, I know that we didn't have the community academy this year because we couldn't get enough interest, but I was wondering, and I know that everybody's overtaxed in terms of shifts, actual shift work and stuff, but I was wondering if it might be possible to have at some point 1 or 2 training officers come to a commission meeting and explain it, maybe even show like a sample video of what you guys look at and discuss, just to give us a better feel for what they're learning with this.
I think that's a great idea, Commissioner. We'd be happy to get that on an agenda. I can work with the chair on identifying a month where that'd be appropriate.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. And I see Commissioner Finneran has a comment as well, or question.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a question about dispatchers. I think you said you have 11 currently. I'm just curious if that is a functional number, and if not, what would be?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think dispatchers are the unsung heroes of this operation, because not only do they dispatch for the police department, but fire and EMS, and they handle about 47,000 incidents per year. 14 would be full staff. That would be comfortable. 12 is operational. 11 is where it's starting to get lean, and when we're lean in dispatch, or even when we're lean in patrol, it cuts in 2 ways on our staff. One is they have to work longer hours. Unfortunately, these vacancies result in some unforeseen or forced overtime. And then there's also the ambient stress of working with only 2 dispatchers in the center. That can be very stressful, as well as when officers are on the street and they show up for roll call, and because of low staffing and a sick call out or 2, when you only have 2 or 3 of your fellow officers there at roll call, that weighs on our team, and it's not lost on us. We haven't been able to really answer why we've got the number of injuries that we do in patrol. It's just bad luck, essentially. And then dispatching is a tough job. So we screen applicants for that job and make sure that we're hiring the right people for it. But it takes its toll, and people do opt to move on. So we'll continue to work to fill those positions, and hopefully bring a little more resource to bear, not only for provision of public safety services in the city, but comfort in our employees knowing that we've got adequate staffing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Finneran. Any other commentary or questions for the chief? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate that report. Moving on to commission business. First, committee reports from all committees. The only 2 committees we have currently are the Complaints Committee and the Animal Control Committee. The Complaints Committee I chair. There has really been no movement on that, and that is on me. I will be prioritizing that this month. Primarily what I'm looking at is getting the complaints into SharePoint so that all the commissioners can see it, and setting a meeting for later in March. Yes, Commissioner Janorio.
Karen has her hand raised, and I think that they are all already in SharePoint.
Are they? Okay.
I believe, yep. You can double check that I got all of them.
Okay, thank you very much.
There is another item under the chief's report. I don't know if that was something that they wanted to present or if it's there for our educational purposes. And I do see that our data analyst is here online as well.
So,
Yeah, I have some data to present. Is now the time?
Yes.
sure.
Great. All right, one moment, please. This. All right, how does that, is there a full screen?
Yeah, looks good.
Is this the full screen for the slides?
It's not, but it's plenty big enough to see it in this view.
Let me try one other thing, and if that doesn't work, then I will just go with that. Sorry about that. We want...
And Mr. Nicholson, would you mind identifying yourself for the record, please?
Sure, yeah, my name is Jeff Nicholson. I am the city data analyst. Technically, I'm housed in IT with the city, but functionally, I spend most of my time working on police data as well as fire and EMS data. I work on the situation table as well. How's that? That's full screen, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, great. So like the chief said, initially the plan was for this month to be a presentation on both arrests by race as well as traffic stops by race. But traffic stops is a little bit woolly, and we couldn't quite get it to a place we wanted it to for this evening, so that's going to get pushed to the next presentation. So tonight we're just going to look at arrests, and particularly arrests by race. What I'll do is show some slides that were presented last month, kind of overall arrest slides, and then break down those points by race or by some other things. Feel free at any point to jump in with questions or anything like that. Great, so this slide here we saw last time. This is just an overview of total arrests year over year. One thing to note here, if you do go back and compare this with last month's numbers, they're slightly different. That's because I pulled the data slightly later, and we reference the incident year, not the arrest year on these counts. So there's a handful more arrests for 2025 incidents that have been made, things like that. So you might notice slight shifts in the numbers, and that's why. So the first new data point we're looking at here is arrested people. And so this is a lot of numbers on the screen, but I'll direct your attention first to the italicized row at the bottom of the table. So of those 1,864 arrests from 2025, there were 841 people who made up those arrests. So that's, 2 point something arrests per person on average. I was curious, of those 841 people, how many times they had been arrested in 2025. And so I broke them out into 5 buckets that you'll see in the first column there, the yellow column. Some people were arrested once, some twice, some 3 to 5 times, some 6 to 10 times, and some more than 10 times. You'll see that more than half of the people, 518 people, were just arrested the one time. That's 62% of all arrestees. And the number gets smaller as the arrest buckets get larger. But interestingly, if you look at those last 2 buckets, those 6 to 10 arrests and more than 10 arrests, that's 68 total people. That's 8% of all arrested people, but they make up 34%, so a third of all arrests for 2025. So I thought that was just some nice table setting as we think through some of this stuff. Like, yes, we're talking about 1,800 arrests, but that is in a list of 841 people. And then even as we drill down further, that volume is driven in part by a small number of people who were arrested many times in 2025. And this is just the same information presented a different way. So the table on the left is putting all of the arrested people into buckets based on how many times they were arrested, once, twice, 3 to 5, up to more than 10. So you see just those 16 people who were arrested more than 10 times this past year. And the table on the right, the green table, is putting all the arrests into those respective buckets. So 518 people with 1 arrest were responsible for 518 arrests. But as you move further down the green table, or down the green chart, you see that, you know, the people with more than 10 arrests, which is 16 people, were responsible for 243 arrests. So just, I don't know, I thought a helpful way to try and visualize sort of the distribution of these arrests. Next slide is also a new one. This is arrests by race, 2012 to 2025. You'll notice in earlier years, there's some sizable gray chunks, which is missing race data, race unknown or expunged. And the vast majority of those are expunged. Chief Burke, you can correct me here, but when an arrest gets expunged, the race data is wiped out of Valcor, unable to be accessed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. So when we look back at this old data, it's a little tough to drill down as precisely. But looking at the last couple years, the arrests are predominantly broken down into white and Black or African American. This past year, we had 74% of arrests were of white people. That's 1,388 arrests, and 22% were of Black or African American, which is 407. 52 arrests were of Asian people, and then just a handful of some other ones. 8 for other, 5 for American Indian or Alaska Native, 4 for missing race data, race unknown, expunged, and then no arrests were made where the race value was. You know what? That's a problem. That's an error. That 0 other should not be there. That 8 other is correct. But there were 0 arrests of Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. And that table is just down in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. And so what we wanted to do was compare those numbers to the estimated population of people in Burlington. So in this chart, the line on the top, the dotted line, is the estimate from the American Community Survey, which is run by the US Census Bureau. It's not as in-depth as the census, but it happens every year, so I like to use it for these kind of comparisons. The data hasn't yet been released for 2025, and since it's a smaller sample survey, there are error bars. You can't say this is a precise value, but we see in the dotted line, we're looking at around 90% every year of population of people in Burlington that are white. Of note, people in the American Community Survey can select just white, or they can select both white and Black. And I made the decision to count both of those in this chart. So this is someone who said they were white or white and maybe another race. So that's the top line there, that dotted line. And the bottom line is our percentage of arrests that were that race. I did remove the expunged and missing races to get a more accurate percentage here. And we see, you know, about a 10 or 15% gap between the population of Burlington and the percentage of people who are arrested in Burlington. I see a hand raised from Commissioner Cox.
Yeah, so I was wondering, so on the previous slides, you had differentiated between those who had been arrested like one time versus those who were sort of the repeat people. And I was wondering on the race slide, is the number of arrests like the number of people that were arrested, or the number of arrests including those who might be repeat people?
That's a good question. This slide is number of arrests. So we're not looking at individual people here, we're counting total arrests. I did run this for people because I wanted to see if there were any differences, and there were only very slight differences. Nothing really jumped out to me as notable, but I am happy to attach that image to the presentation as well when we send it over to you all to review.
Thank you. I also had one other question, which is, and I'm less familiar with this probably than what I should be, but I understand that the courts now have like a special program for people that are repeat people that give, I guess there's some discussion about whether it should be this model or that model, but apparently it's like designed to give more support or intervention of some kind to help those people a little bit function in the world without being arrested all the time when that's an issue. And I was wondering if you're seeing anything in the data that you can see, which might even identify particular people, which obviously you wouldn't want to publicize that, but I'm wondering if you're seeing any effects from, any positive effects from whatever programs are starting up in that regard.
Yeah, Chief, do you want to touch briefly on the court itself, and then maybe I can talk the data stuff we've done?
Yeah, happily. So I think Commissioner Cox, you're referring to the accountability docket. So that was, that had a timeline. We stood up in late October. It just wrapped up in early February. And what really we saw happen was that the backlog of cases in Chittenden was dramatically reduced. A number of the folks that are chronic recidivists really stay in that misdemeanor category of crime, and they were able to resolve those cases. And through that process, we know that the system, the criminal legal system more broadly, will be much more efficient in terms of throughput. It also allowed State Attorney George the opportunity to focus on pending murder trials that she had. And best of my knowledge, all but one of our 2022 to 2024 murder and attempted murder cases have been resolved, which will then allow trial docket time for other matters. Sarah George is going to continue the accountability docket on her own with the assistance of the court. It's going to meet once a week, and I think it is important that there is a docket where folks that are struggling with any number of issues have a spot to go once a week, as opposed to having it lost, their status conference lost on their calendar 30 days out, and getting kind of caught in this cycle of missing court, getting an arrest warrant, going to jail, going back to court to be told to come back in 30 days to do it all over again. So I think there is success in the model, and I know that the General Assembly will be considering the governor's ask for additional funding for these accountability dockets to be sustained in the future, not only here in Chittenden, but in other counties in the state. So I hope that helps answer the question.
Thank you.
And then just for my piece with data specifically, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily aiding the court in terms of identifying people. I think they have a lot of internal data that they're using. I will say we are monitoring people who have high number of interactions with the police, regardless of arrests. And we're really using that to help drive our situation table, which meets every week to sort of triage people who are struggling. So we have been using that data to help service providers identify people who might be a good fit for the situation table.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Sure. All right, so I will keep going here. So again, we're seeing about a 10 or 15 or more percent underrepresentation in white arrests as compared to the percentage of population as estimated by the American Community Survey. And when we look at Black or African American, it's sort of the opposite picture, where here the bottom line is the dashed line is our percentage line based on the American Community Survey. We're looking at 5 to 7% of the population of Burlington identifying as Black or Black and another race. And arrest-wise, we're dealing with 15 to north of 20%. This year, I believe it was 22% of arrests. So we certainly have an overrepresentation there of arrests. You know, it's probably worth noting that not everyone who gets arrested in Burlington is necessarily a resident of Burlington. So while these aren't one-to-one data sets, it's sort of our best way to measure this sort of thing. Lastly, I looked at Asian, which is much smaller numbers. If you look at the y-axis here, we're dealing with small numbers. This year, I think it was 52, something like that, Asian arrests. And we see a very, very slight underrepresentation of arrests as compared to percentage of population, where arrests is somewhere between 2 and 3%, and population is somewhere around 5, 6, 7%. This is a chart we looked at last month. This is of our arrests in 2025, what were the top charges? So you'll see arrest on warrant is really head of the pack here with 455. You also had almost 200 unlawful trespasses. See violation of conditions, retail theft, and then the middle is a lot of different sort of assaults, domestic assaults, things like that. And so what we wanted to do was look at this chart, but break that out by race. And we see that it varies depending on the type of charge. Arrest on warrants was predominantly white, 83%. But something like unlawful trespass is more down in the 65, 2/3 range. Retail theft is notable to me, that 90% of retail theft arrests were of white people. I can't claim to know why or what that means, but it seems notable to me that there's such a difference there between that and some of the other charges. Some of the more violent crimes are more evenly split. Things like domestic assault and aggravated assault. Domestic assault aggravated is just about 50-50 split. And we keep going down the list here. Again, some are more disparate than others. Things like cocaine possession and driving with a criminally suspended license is closer to in line with the population percentages, but things like burglary are, more of a 2/3, 1/3 split. A lot to take in here. Again, I can't necessarily draw conclusions, but I think it's certainly worth looking at and thinking about. Next slide. We saw last time, this is arrests by type since 2012. These are the sort of 5 main arrest types in the Valcor data system: citation, lodgings, warrant request, and referred to alternative justice. Chief, would you mind doing a quick overview of what those arrest types are, super briefly?
Happily. So this really falls in line with Vermont Rules of Criminal Procedure, and those rules script when we must release folks on a citation. So the blue section of each bar are the cases where we're issuing a citation, which is ordering a defendant to appear in court within 4 to 6 weeks. The red section of the bar is anytime that we're lodging a defendant. Typically that's for crimes of violence or felonies, or anytime there's an arrest warrant with bail. The green section is arrest warrants themselves. A little footnote about arrest warrants: a lot of the warrants that we see from court are cite for the next business day, so those folks aren't actually physically taken into custody, rather just issued a citation on the street and sent to court the next day. The goldenrod section of the bar is warrant request. That's where an officer has done an investigation, cannot locate the defendant, and applies to the court to have an arrest warrant issued for that person. And then the brown section of the bar are folks that are referred to the Community Justice Center for a restorative justice resolution.
Sweet, thank you. So what we wanted to do is, again, break out the 2025 bar by race. So all the way on the left are white arrestees, We see 53% of those arrests were citations, 23% lodgings, 19% were warrants, and then small portions were the other two. And as we compare that to the Black or African American arrestees, we do see a 10% difference in that lodged category, where it's 33% of Black arrests compared to 23% of white arrests. To the chief's point about the nature of the crime and seeing more violent arrests, I imagine ending up in lodgings, that could play a role. Thinking back to that last slide about arrest type there, or arrest charge, I should say, could be playing a role there. I put the Asian arrests in there as well, but it's so small that it's hard to really draw too much out. Additionally, I wanted to compare this to the 4-year average. Oh, I see a question.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because the like alternative justice pathway, I saw that it went down in 2025, or that it was like up in, I don't know, the slide before, just looking at the years, and then seeing who has access to it and who's being referred. And I was wondering if there's a standard for how those folks are being referred, or if it's case by case, or if it's like, yeah, the subjective process versus objective. You could talk about that.
I'm happy to answer that. So we do have a memorandum of understanding with the Community Justice Center. Essentially, there's 14 misdemeanor crimes that are eligible for referral, and we look to seize upon those opportunities with folks that do not have a history of being a recidivist, first-time offenders, if you will. I will say I was, disappointed but not surprised when I saw the reduction. When you look at the number of, the percentage increase in the number of people that were arresting on warrant, or for violation of conditions of release, or for things like unlawful trespass, because these are issues where we're dealing with folks that are really kind of mired in whatever their situation might be, whether they're unhoused, impoverished, substance use disorder, or otherwise just not viable for referral to alternative justice. And any time that it involves an arrest warrant or a violation of conditions of release as set by the court, those cases just simply cannot be referred. They can't be heard in the alternative setting. They have to be referred to district court.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, so what I did was compare the 2025 breakout for white and Black arrests.
Mr. Nicholson, hold on one second. I believe we have a question from the public. Yes, sir. What is your name? If you could step to the mic, sir. I can't hear you very well. Sorry.
She said that a long time ago. So hello, my name is Bruce Wilson. I'm Vermont Human Rights Commissioner, and also I'm a founding member of the Community Justice Center, back in '98 or whatever at Burlington. I was one of the directors for the Straight Talk Vermont program.
Sure.
And so I remember when Burlington Police created alternative justice. And so I don't forget what it really means now, and how do you be referred. I heard I heard the chief talk about some numbers, some measurement numbers, and some ways warrants and things like that. But I don't know what the crime. Maybe they can tell me what's the lowest crime you can have to be on alternative justice.
Sure.
Or what? I don't know what the protocol anymore. So, thank you.
Sure. Chief or Mr. Nicholson, could you explain how you get referred to alternative justice, or what the lowest category of crime that you can get referred to would be?
I'm happy to send Bruce a copy of the MOU that we have with the CJC for his review.
And I have another question. How many I guess it's police commission, but how many African Americans are referred to CJC, parallel justice, or whatever, restorative justice, and whatever community service opportunities they have to fulfill? Is that part of? Could that be, is that a part of with the police? I know it's kind of like alternative justice, but it's different, you know, it's different. So I just asked that question because, you know, I was looking at the numbers right there, and it's like incredible numbers for African Americans who've been arrested and would have who are charged with higher crimes than white people, and it's been like that for many years. I'm also a Vermont State Police, fair and partial policing for over 10 years, and so I see the numbers in Vermont State Police and Burlington Police are about the same numbers, how they arrest individuals of color, in which we're African Americans are 1.4% in Vermont. I mean, yes, in Burlington, no, Vermont. And so I don't see how we can be arrested like over like 85% of the numbers is people of color, African Americans, and it's been like that. You know, I've lived in Vermont since 1989, and it's been like that. And now, you know, with restorative justice, with racial equity, inclusion, and belonging programs, it's still the same. And so, you know, and one of the moderator there said that African Americans or people of color are. The numbers could be kind of high because they don't live in Vermont. But I didn't hear him say nothing about the white people who lives in Vermont. Maybe their numbers are high because they don't live in Vermont. You know what I'm saying? So right there, that's to me, that's some type of discrimination. You know, I do also have a degree in psychology from Northwestern University, and so I understand words and I understand what people say and physiology and certain things. I won't bet on nothing. I'm just going off what I'm thinking and what I see and what I know from living in Vermont. I've been in high-risk situations myself, you know, and so for me, my job is to help people who are serving. I say everybody, you know. The governor told me a couple months ago that, Bruce, you know how many people we serve? I said, how many? He said 607,000 people. So everybody you see, you tell them that you're a human rights commissioner. And so my coordinator says over 600,007. But so that's what I do. That's the job. Everybody know me. My program had over 50 awards, and we've done over 700 events in the state. And so we try to work with everybody, and everybody who knows my name, they will tell you that's how I am. That's what I do. And so I'm just still feel kind of, you know, I don't feel right. You know what I'm saying? As a person of color, I just still don't feel right. You know, I really don't feel right. I don't understand it. You know, I think people should go back to pitchforks and get some more fair and partial policing trainings. You know, I talked to one station, I'm sorry, I'm going off a little bit, and asked them, my job was to go in there and ask them about the community that they serve, and not about fair and partial policing. But it came out of my mouth, I guess probably because of who I am. And they asked me if they do the training. They said, yeah. I said, how long it take? They said, half an hour, you know. You know, I think I told that to the chief, and he told me, Bruce, that's probably why they do the training now for over 2 hours, you know. But, you know, it's a lot better, you know. But all I'm trying to say is that, you know, what is fair and partial policing? You know what I'm saying, really? Who thinks about it, you know? No officers that I see out there, I ask them the question. They don't even know, they can't even, sometimes they have to think about, actually, what is FIP? And they don't really understand what the hell I'm talking about. You know, FIP, what the hell? You know, fair and partial. So I think officers should, you know, this is a white state in America. You know, I think officers should learn more about people who look like me and be able to understand our antics, you know what I mean, and how we wave our hands, physiology, because a lot of times we get our charges raised up because, well, we like this, you know, like that. We just like any other body in the world, that's just the way we are, you know what I'm saying? That's just the way we are. You know what I'm saying? It's like me right now. And I'm the Human Rights Commissioner and all that. I don't know how many boards I sit on. My program's have over 50 awards, and like I said, we've done over 700 events. And so I ain't better than nobody because everything I do is serve people. But I'm just saying that it's got to be all I know is this. I wasn't planning to do anything special, but work with the people who I serve and try to do the best I can in life and to earn my points in heaven and just do whatever I can that's good, you know. But I think I'm going to have to take another road to change things, how things operate in the state. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to have to actually talk to my peers who I sit on the central level, our governors and senators and mayor. And so I'm going to have to do some work on some other end, or another type of work. I don't want to do that because I love everybody, and the people who doing the job, I want to support them best I can. But you know, when you're not identifying people like me. All our numbers are high. You know, we're not going to a restorative justice program. We're not going to community service opportunities. We're not, you know, they send us to a court or whatever, you know. And so I know this because I'm a part of all those things, you know. And so why? Why? And one of the reasons is because people don't understand what fair and impartial policing is. They don't understand about the people. I don't go to your, I'm not your next door neighbor. I'm not go to your church. I don't go to your school. We didn't grow up together. So how are you going to know about me? You're going to know about me in a lot of ways. Stereotypical ways. The stereotypical ways are, you know, what they say about, oh, the black people, they'll tear down your neighborhood. Their neighborhoods are blighted. They high risk. They,
Sure.
you know, they, you know, you know what I'm saying? When they meet me, they say, wow, here's a guy. He's a human rights commissioner. He opened up 5 youth centers in the malls, and they were chief of 5 and 2 art galleries. You know, support, you know, chill out center, living room, all the people don't know that's me. I don't go around and say that I did that, but I do. What I did for the community, and guess what? People who my youth centers were between 3,000 and 8,000 square feet. Art Gallery University Mall, over 8,000 square feet. You see it. You've seen all. You don't know who really actually did it. All the graffiti and murals you see is through my program. Art So Wonderful. I'm founder. I don't want to clean up. My team cleaned up graffiti off the street since 2001. We didn't want to clean up the graffiti and put those cool 70% of the murals in Burlington through Art So Wonderful. All the electrical boxes in 2010 is called Art So Wonderful box.
Well,
so I'm trying to say is that people like me and people who looks like me are actually doing an incredible service for Burlington and the state. And so we need to be we need to be looked at as that just, you know, when people put their electric taxes are due right now. They put the signs in it, they expect you to come pay your taxes, but you got to support the people who you serve. You just can't put them in high risk because your stereotypical ways you know about me because you don't know about me. Instead of sitting down and talking to me, you know, like, it's not good. So you just got to know the people, learn who we are.
So if I understand your question then, for Mr. Nicholson and the chief, was if we had data on the racial breakdown of people that get referred to alternative programs and community service, and also whether or not and how much cultural sensitivity training the police are getting. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I think, you know, like, I was on a whole team that created Uncommon Alliance. We worked with all the chiefs, and we created the data collection with Seguino, you know, and Vermont State Police, and all the chiefs around. And then what we got done was the tickets. Now you got it's a race to break down behind the traffic tickets about your nationality, your origin, whoever. But the thing about it still good law enforcement officers. You know, I can say I'm Chinese, and they'll write down I'm African American because they don't ask me what my nationality is. So to me, it was a lot of work for you know.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Well, so I'll address your first question to Mr. Nicholson as to whether or not they have or can generate the data that shows racial differences in referral to alternative justice programs. Mr. Nicholson, is that something you have?
I don't have it right now, but I could certainly compile it without too much trouble. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And Chief, with regard to the question on you know, cultural sensitivity training, kind of, you know, knowing who you're interacting with, and you know, any particular, you know, cultural expectations they have, is that something that the police have engaged in, and what is the status of that?
That's part of our statutory mandated training. So every other year we do fair and impartial policing training, and I'd be happy to connect with Bruce offline to talk about the recent sessions that we've had and what's on the future, but that comes to us from the state.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Does that answer your questions at least for tonight? I mean, we certainly ask the Chief to come back.
It, you know, answers some of my questions, you know, but not really had no questions answered because, you know, right now, probably even as we speak, people are pulling over people who look like me, you know, saying for I don't know why, because they have out-of-state plates on their car and they're not from here. So they'll stop them because they're not from here. You know, like, who's from? I'll go to in Hyde Park in Chicago, see my friends who graduated from University of Chicago, and I went to Northwestern. They say, where the hell is Vermont, Illinois at? You know what I'm saying? They're like, you know, they're not from here. You know what I mean? In theory, you know what I'm saying? But I've
Yeah.
been here since 1989. Like I said.
Well, sure, I appreciate that. And Mr. Nicholson, is that something that we have at least data on, that we could generate a report on with whether or not in the racial breakdown there is any designation as to whether or not someone is from within Vermont, resides in Vermont versus resides out of Vermont?
For traffic stops?
Yes.
For the
For
plates?
arrests
Yeah,
generally, I think, but traffic
Oh.
stops.
I'm not, I'd have to think about arrests. I think we have address data for a lot of people, so I suppose I could try and put something together.
I'm
For
not sure how
traffic
that would
stops, I
really
do-
aggregate the differences of knowing how many white people are traveling to Vermont to visit their friends and family and not getting arrested versus black people that are. So I'm not sure that data is calculable, even if we had the addresses of the people that were arrested.
Well, and it may not be. I'm just asking Mr. Nicholson if he, has that data to answer. I'm sorry, sir, I missed your last name. My hearing's out.
Bruce Wilson.
Wilson, Mr. Wilson.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm just wanting to address Mr. Wilson's question.
Yeah, well, you know what? If it worries me a lot to a person who studied psychology, And so when you use the words that, when you say that a lot of the people who look like me is arrested because a lot of them or some of them are not from here, right there, it's like, it's still, it's like, I think they still stereotyping me, you know what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah,
You
no,
know,
I
you know what I'm saying?
totally-
When they can say the same thing, when they say white people are being arrested, some of them is not, what he said was like the chief said, and then nobody said like, oh, white people, some they arrested, but because some of them are not from here. So it sounds to me, if I use my own little tiny little Northwestern brain, is that people are pulling on people that looks like me that might have some type of plate on them or don't have their seatbelt on. Or something. I had somebody who got pulled over because they had one of those fresh pine things in the
Sure.
Everybody and their mama, when we were born, people was putting those little pine things in the rearview mirror, and they pulled them over because of that.
Sure, yeah.
Who gets pulled over because of that? I know why they got pulled over.
Sure, I appreciate that, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Nicholson, if that data is calculable, if you are able to put that together, could you, with both these areas of data we've talked about, put something together and bring it back next month?
Certainly, and I will say just about traffic stops and out-of-state plates, because Mr. Wilson brought that up. I do have that information that'll be presented at next month's presentation about traffic stops and race, sort of the breakdown of different race traffic stops, and then if they had out-of-state plates or not, to try and drill down at that
Okay.
issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholson. And Chief, if you could add potentially to your report next month, just a little more developed information about training with regard to cultural sensitivity and that sort of thing that Mr. Wilson was bringing up tonight, that would be great.
Happily.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing, I would hope that they, if they could, like, break down the out-of-state numbers, out-of-state plates based on the state. You know what I'm saying? I bet I wonder who's getting pulled over who got a plate on from Aruba. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Who's
Well, yes, sir, and I'm hopeful. that-
Cancun? Who's getting pulled over for that? Or you got New York, Illinois, Boston, Massachusetts, Connecticut. If you got those places, I bet it's more of those places than somebody from, Cape Cod or.
Sure, yeah, no, I appreciate that, Mr. Wilson. So I'm hopeful that Mr. Nicholson can flesh that out a little bit for us next month, and if you would like to come back next month.
No doubt about it.
And we can see, what information we get, whether or not you have other questions.
Well,
in that
all I want
regard.
to say is thank you for the job you do. The chief knows that he's my friend. I like him a lot. He's supporting some events for us, coming up 8 events I'm putting on right here in the Contours Auditorium. And, I really appreciate him a lot. He's dear to me.
Sure, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and thank you for your comments, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you.
And before I move on, let me just apologize too to Mr. Wilson. I hear what you're saying about, well, it certainly was not my intention when I brought up the difference between sort of the population data set and the arrest data set to sort of single out just black arrests. I can see how it would come off that way. And so I sincerely apologize because that was certainly not my intention. But again, I can see how that message would have been received by the way I delivered that. So yeah, that's my apologies, and I'll work on being better about that.
Thank you very much. It's like, all I'm saying is that, you know, like I sit in all these rooms with the police chiefs and everybody, you know, and they talk the way they talk. You know, they talk. That's who they are. You know, it's with the law enforcement. They got their little ways of being with each other. But sometimes they forget that I'm in the room too. You know what I'm saying? And that I'm work for the people. I work for everybody. You know what I'm saying? And like some things they think like, you know, not Bruce. He's with us, which I am with them, but not like, you know, not when you. Now, certain things I don't need to hear it, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so, like, when you say things, think about the words you say to anybody. I don't care if it's one African American in the room among 100 people on Zoom or whatever. You know, you still have to watch. When you're giving out data that you know have data for, you got to watch the things you say. You really have to.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I just have a few more slides to get through here. So this was comparing the arrest by type to the 4-year average, and we see that same disparity persisting there in the lodgings. The 4-year average, 2021 to 2024, 32% of Black arrests were lodgings, and 19% of white arrests were lodgings over the last 4 years. And I do have some numbers in the corner there about refer to alternative justice. The 4-year average for white people over the last 4 years was 7% of their arrests were referred to alternative justice, and 6% of Black arrests were referred to alternative justice, whereas this year it was 2% of both arrests for both white and Black. One of the last points we have is drug arrests. This was a chart we saw last month. 102 drug arrests in 2025 is the highest since 2018. And we broke out what that looked like by race. This looks similar visually to the overall arrests by race, with the different colors representing the different race choices on the arrest. You'll see similarly 2012 through 2020, we have some missing race data. A lot of those are expunged. We see in 2025, 77% of drug arrests were of white people, which mirrors the overall arrest breakdown between white and Black this year. And we can see in years past, particularly 2019 through 2021 was particularly disparate, but it's been pretty disparate over the last 5 years in general. But this year, it's closer to the overall arrest percentage, which is 77% white and 21% Black. The last data point is one we also looked at last time. This is arrests by area. Of the 5 patrol areas where these arrests occurring. This is 2021 to 2025. Last couple of years, there's been a big uptick in arrests downtown. The second most frequent location is the Old North End, followed by the Hill section, the South End, and the New North End. There are a couple arrests that we don't have area data for due to data entry issues. And so again, we're looking at arrests by race, by area. So for both white and Black, about half of the arrests occur downtown. 51% of white arrests in 2025 occurred downtown, and 48% of Black arrests occurred downtown. Where we do see them start to differ is arrests that occur in the South End and the New North End. 16% of arrests of white people occurred either in the South End or the New North End, sort of, further away areas outside of the downtown core, whereas that percentage is more like 6 or 7% for Black or African American arrests. And did the same thing here. I wanted to look at the 4-year average as well. Notably, the concentration of downtown arrests for Black people is more pronounced in 2025 compared to the 4-year average. 14% of Black arrests over the 4-year average of the past 4 years occurred in the South End, compared to just 5% of Black arrests this past year in 2025. But otherwise, when we look at the white arrests, the percentages in 2025 remain pretty stable compared to the 4-year average. So that's what I have for arrest data. Similar to what I said at the end of last month's presentation, I'm working on compiling a big appendix, big Excel file for the commission to access that has all the tables. So as you're looking at it, you don't have to be comparing little bars on a static PowerPoint presentation, but you'll have all the numbers yourself to look at. And if there are any questions, of course, if there are any questions now, I'm happy to answer them. But if there are any additional questions after the fact, feel free to reach out via email, and I'm happy to chat some more. Yeah, Commissioner Cox.
So it used to be that the rest or, police incident reporting was available to the public on a spreadsheet. And so you could download it, you could rearrange things according to what you're looking for, make your own graphs, of what things you're interested in. And I love, the new software that you're using to capture all this data and report it. But I was wondering if there's anything still available, like what there used to be, just if the public wants to go look at it like a particular issue.
Yeah, there is. I can send you an email with a link to that. So every month I post a fresh batch of all of the incidents, all the arrests, and all the offenses, which has a lot of information, and that lives on the city website. I'll send that along to you. And then, like Chief said, we are working on updating the blotter, which I think last time I checked, let me give it a refresh. Yeah, a version of it is now live on the blotter section of the police department website, where people can download CSVs for each day's incidents, though that doesn't have a lot of information. That's pretty much just incident number, call type, street, I think, and date. But the information I post every month is a little more in-depth. So I'll be sure to send that over to you. I think if you just Google Burlington Police Department incidents.
I might not have understood exactly what you said, but like, if I could just give a quick example. So like at one point we were looking at for calls where the police identified it as being people that had a mental health issue that was involved in the call, whether or not it resulted in an arrest or, just resolving whatever the issue was, that there was a call. And we were looking at it in terms of how many per day, like on average, are these sorts of calls and what time of day, so that we could determine whether or not it would be useful to recommend that street outreach, for example, instead of being from 8 till 4, if it made more sense for them to have an extended shift length, or like have a different group that comes on later in the day so that they can capture more of those sorts of calls. And so is that, but we don't have the kind of software that you do, right? So we needed like something that would be Excel friendly.
Right. Well, so while you might not have that software, though, I will say my software is free and open source. It's called R Studio. If you'd like to learn it, it's very fun. But regardless of the software I'm using to process the data, all of the tabular, the Excel data, the CSV data is online. And like you said, the mental health information and things like that, I am just emailing you now the link to where that exists. You'll just click that link, and then you can click download, and it'll pull the whole Excel file for you to explore.
Perfect. Could you also email or email to the group or whatever the information about the software that you're using? It does look very cool, and I'm going like, wow, that's great. So,
Yeah, I'll add that into my email now.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Janorio?
Chief, can you tell me why an arrest, what would result in it being expunged?
It's an order from the court. It's actually an issue that the legislature's been grappling with. That when a record is expunged, every single piece of data associated with it is deleted, and that presents a number of challenges. The court then started to use another apparatus allowed under the law where they seal a record, and that really, what that does is shields it from public records inspection. There's a couple of bills that are going through this session right now. We'll see where it lands, but this was, part of criminal justice reform, but it had a number of unintended consequences.
So, I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I understood. You told me how it happens. What are the reasons why it would be expunged or the case would be sealed?
So I don't want to try to explain every judicial decision that's made. There's certain crimes where it's built into the statute where potentially the charge could be expunged. There's other circumstances that a sitting judge can take into account, but essentially the police department receives those orders from the court and we have to expunge the record.
Okay. I personally might find it helpful to break out, obviously there's more in previous years because more cases have been expunged than currently have not been through the system, to maybe instead of have the missing race data, race unknown expunged to be broken out, so we could kind of maybe remove that from the percentage versus just being unknown, but being removed for another reason. I personally would find that helpful.
Yeah, I can make that change.
Thank you. And then, Chief, I just wanted to know if you wanted to make a comment about the general discrepancy between the arrests and how they don't really match up with the races of people in our community and have been fairly consistent, throughout back to 2012? Obviously, you haven't been chief since 2012, but just wondering if you had any comment for this past year.
Yeah, no, I think it's good information to reflect upon. And the one thing about arrest data, a lot of the arrests that we make are not discretionary in nature. So crimes that are committed that are reported to us when we investigate, people that have warrants issued for their arrest, violations, conditions of release. So I think there's dozens of questions that we could ask of this and parse it down. But I think what's important takeaway information from a high level for every police organization is just to reflect on the disparity, knowing that systemic racism in society influences a lot of these outcomes, in ensuring that implicit bias is not creeping into any discretionary decisions that police officers are making on the street.
Okay, thank you. So that was your reflection on it, that it exists and no one is immune from it?
At a very high level, I mean, I think this is a topic that we've grappled with for a long time. And in fact, some of what Mr. Wilson was talking about, the Uncommon Alliance that led to traffic data collection beginning here in Chittenden County,
Yep.
the first unbiased police policy kind of taking hold here in Chittenden County. A lot of the early education that went on with that was with law enforcement was really an indictment against being a law enforcement officer, and it wasn't super effective in our understanding of what was actually going on. It wasn't until Chief Del Pozo was here and we actually had a professor from Morehouse come in and talk about implicit bias, where we could start to understand that. And then through other educational opportunities in the profession, we now realize more about our history in this profession, in ways that the police have been weaponized against BIPOC community. And I think, there's a lot to learn and understand, and especially to just on a human level, why people don't trust government actors, particularly police officers. So again, like a lot to be learned. It's important to watch the data in this regard. But one of the first questions I would have is, how could we distill out discretionary versus non-discretionary arrest action that police officers are taking?
Right, and obviously we're only looking at the arrests here. We have more data coming and other things to look at, but I was just surprised by what I saw that, as you've said, all the strives that we have attempted to make to reduce these discrepancies and whether or not we can call out specific reasons for that, it doesn't seem like you've identified any specific additional reasons. Do you have any recommendations for what we could do to try to make more progress on that front?
So in terms of what we're faced with today, I literally have gotten this data just about the same time that the commission has gotten this data. So to take it back and to better understand what this means. Even, the first table setting metric that we had here was, although we had just over 1,800 arrests, we arrested 851 people. So then what does that look like? Because what we see time and time again, especially with the conduct downtown, is a person will pick up an initial criminal charge, then they're released by the court on conditions of release. They violate those, they get another charge and another charge. It's the same person over and over again. And at the root of that is some root cause that's not being addressed by the system. And the police are not making an independent decision about whether or not to arrest the person. I think that's a real important perspective to put on this.
So your opinion is that most of it is systemic and out of the control of individual officers' decision?
No, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm
Okay.
suggesting that would be an important factor to consider.
Okay. I suppose I was just asking because even though you've only been in this role for 2025, the data seems so consistent with previous years, and you certainly seem to have knowledge of what occurred under Del Pozo and under previous chiefs, and that this data should not surprise or shock anybody. It's a right status quo with what people have been talking about in perpetuity. Their experiences seem to be reflected, and I'm unsure what the response of the BPD is to that, other than you understandably want to reflect on that and that you understand it's a systemic problem. I guess I'm unsure if you have any more concrete solutions to propose.
I don't have any concrete solutions to propose this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we will move on back to the committee discussion. We're moving on to the Animal Control Committee, I believe, and I'll give the floor to you, Commissioner Janorio. You've done a lot of work on that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Chair Depper, before you go on to that,
Yes, Commissioner Cox.
I'm sorry, I had a question about the Complaints Committee. So
Okay,
could we
sure,
go
go
back to that? So under our own policy and under the approved chief's policy, we have 14 days from the time that a final decision is made to either accept or ask for more information or say that we disagree with the chief's handling of a complaint. And I was wondering, because we hadn't gotten any information about any final action on any of the complaints for a long time, and I was wondering if you're planning on notifying us when those come in, because we do have that timeline. Thank you.
You're talking about final action?
So when the chief makes a decision about how to dispose of the matter. So for example, some action is taken against an officer or no action is taken against any officers and it's handled in some other way. There's like a list of things that they can do. Then we have 14 days from the time that they take the final action. So they're supposed to send an email to you, I guess, or whoever it is that you're having them send it to. And then the commission as a whole has 14 days from that date to take whatever kind of follow-up action. And so since we haven't been doing that at all, I was wondering, has there been no final?
Right, from the final action is what I understood your point to be.
Correct.
And I don't have an answer for you on that. I suspect that once we look through the complaints that are all on SharePoint and we have another meeting, I think we can evaluate that then. Until we get there, I'm hesitant to speculate, but I suspect that if we don't have information about a final action yet, the timing for that 14 days wouldn't toll. So if there is a particular issue that is in those complaints, either that a final action has been taken and we're over the 14 days, or that there has been no final action taken, we can talk about that then. If you have a particular complaint that you're curious about, I think that would certainly, give us a better procedural, place to start to answer your question, because I believe that would be on a case-by-case basis.
I guess I'm wondering what procedure you or you and the committee have developed to notify the commission when you do receive the final action by the chief.
None yet, but I think that'd be a good thing to bring up in the next complaints committee. So if you could just send me an email on that to remind me, and I'll put that on the agenda for the next complaints committee meeting.
Can I propose that we have a standing date set for a complaints committee meeting every month?
Sure, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
I don't have it right now, but yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea.
I can send out an email and maybe we can find a date that works for everybody.
Sure, great, thank you. Any other questions or issues on the complaints committee? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on. Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't have a comment on that, but I had my hand raised before we went to the committee reports. I'd like to make sure that the record reflect the commission's appreciation for the time and effort that Jeff Nicholson has put into the report that we just heard.
Great, thank you. Moving on to the Animal Complaints Committee, Commissioner Janorio.
Yeah, so it seems like we have everybody on board, police commissioners and outside professionals. So Scheib is going to notify everybody. I'm not sure if that's a paper notification in addition to emails of potential dates so that we can have the hearing and the recent incident about a dangerous dog. So potentially in the first or second week of March, we should have that hearing.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. And my understanding is that the notice forms are in front of the clerk as we speak over the past couple days. So I'll follow up. We'll follow up on that over the next week to make sure those get out timely. Thank you. Any other questions with regard to the Animal Control Committee meeting? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the discussion regarding a joint meeting with the Racial Equity and Inclusion and Belonging Committee and the Public Safety Committee meeting. Counselor, I'm sorry, and her name escapes me.
Counselor Grant.
Counselor Grant, thank you. Counselor Grant has suggested a joint meeting. Is there any discussion on this from any of the commissioners?
I think it's a great idea. I think we have a lot of overlapping issues to discuss and commonalities that could be really proactive. So I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Anybody else? I tend to agree. I think it's a good idea. I do think would make sense to, if we decide that we do want to participate in this, to reach out to Counselor Grant and talk about input on the agenda and what the agenda might be, so that we can, make sure that, because that I would think, I don't know how big the REIB committee is, but that's quite a few people to engage, and it would make sense to me to have, a pretty tight agenda. Anybody else? No? Okay. Just based on consensus, I'll put it like this. Does anybody have a motion with regard to the REIB and Public Safety joint meeting with the Commission?
I move that we contact the REIB Committee and Public Safety Committee and coordinate on a date for a joint meeting.
Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, so that's 4 of the 7, so that carries, unless I missed something. Okay, 4 of the 7, so that carries. So I'll reach out to Counselor Grant to start looking at a date and trying to coordinate topics for that. All right, moving on to the 5.3, the bylaws discussion. Now, I'm going to suggest a way to do this. Looking at what got published on Civic Clerk, it looks like the original draft that was sent to the commissioners wasn't posted, and a couple of the edits were. I believe, and if there's any objection to this, please let me know. I believe that the two biggest subject matter areas that were that were up for discussion were the structure in terms of a chair or chair and co-chair, or a chair and vice chair structure for the committee or for the commission. And the other primary subject matter area seemed to be potential modifications to the public comment time and order. There were other, various red lines on that, but as we don't have the draft published and only have one of the red lines and another copy that contains some modifications, I'm going to suggest that we talk about the chair, co-chair versus chair, vice chair model first, and try to get to some consensus on that, and then talk about any potential modifications to the public comment section, get some consensus on that, and then not do the entire bylaws tonight. Do those two pieces, just in the interest of time and organization. Just do those two pieces, because those are the bigger ones. And then, as I had suggested over email, I can put together another copy that contains the consensus, or the voting consensus on the chair, vice chair, or chair, co-chair model, the modifications, if any, to the public comment period, and a more unified draft that brings in the other red lines. If that is okay with everybody, then we can potentially come to the next meeting and have a cleaner copy to then vote on that can be published ahead of time with any other red lines that anyone wants to submit. If that is okay with everybody, then I'll just move forward like that. Yes, Commissioner Paul.
So a number of us put a fair amount of time into reviewing the proposed draft bylaws. We were all given several weeks, I think it was, after the draft bylaws were given to us to propose any changes. I don't know why the initial draft was not posted. It should have been posted. If it was asked to be posted, I would think that it would have been. I just want to make sure that whatever it is that we're going to do tonight, that if we need to revisit this in a month, that every single red line change, nothing is altered. Unless we have agreed on it, every single red line change is not aggregated in a way that anything is missing. So in other words, if you want to take whatever two versions of, or two commissioners who had some changes, or three commissioners that had some changes, that every single one of those changes is not changed, but is there in a month.
Yeah, that's fine. That doesn't bother me at all.
Okay, well, I mean, I just want to make sure that I didn't really understand that, and so sometimes when people say they're going to put things together, sometimes it doesn't always come out that way. So I just wanted to make sure.
I'm sorry, you mean that everybody's comments are just available separately in their own redlined documents, and then we would have the final draft?
That was my understanding, that once if we talk kind of substantively about what I perceive, and could be wrong, but what I perceive as the two bigger subject matter areas to discuss, and then we come back next, we'll have a draft that includes the consensus and votes on the two subject matter areas that we discussed tonight, has some aggregated information based on the red line comments from other commissioners, and we'll have the red line comments from other commissioners all posted together for the next meeting, so that we will have, at least in theory, the two large subject matter areas relatively done, and then all the commissioners will have an opportunity to look at the secondary draft.
Second draft.
And the red line comments that led to the secondary draft. Does that make sense?
Sure. I just wanted to make sure I understood what Karen was asking for.
Sure.
That's all.
So I do think that actually there are three areas that are rather substantive.
Okay.
The two that you mentioned, and at least when I did propose changes, I think there were the majority of the role of the chair. There's probably more red line than there is the original. So I would say there probably are 3 areas. There are other things that are definitely changes from one, there are smaller changes, but I think those actually are the 3. If you only want to do 2 tonight, then I guess we'll do 2 tonight. Maybe we should just get on with it and see what we can do.
Sure, and I appreciate that. I'm just trying to organize this a little bit because there's a lot, and I want to make sure that our discussion is organized enough so that the public can follow along, and so that when we get, both for the minutes tonight and so when we get, potentially to the next meeting, that it can be, it'll be easier to follow for all of us. And so, Commissioner Paul, if you could point me out to your red lines in this 3rd bucket with regard to the role of the chair. Is that in section 7?
This would be in section 6, officers of the commission. Is that what you're asking?
Well, you said, so in subject
The role
matter,
of the chair?
the role
Duties
of the chair,
it's
the
actually
chair
called-
shall.
Yeah, it's called duties of the chair.
Duties
Yeah,
of the
number
chair in
7,
section
yes.
7? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you very much. Okay, sure. So 3 subject matter areas, I'll add that just to my list. All right. Okay, so I will start with, let's see, forgive me, just look at our timing a little bit here. I know it's getting late and I want to make sure we all have time. All right, so we've got 60 minutes for this. We can certainly push it if we need to. For all of our business, I would say that 60 minutes would probably take us into the 8 to 8:15 range. So if we get to 8:15 and we still have more to talk about, I will probably put it to a vote to either continue talking tonight or to bring it back up next month.
Chair Depper,
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to remind you that apparently there's also an executive session tonight.
Yes,
I'm
So
sorry, I
I
didn't
did-
hear you.
there's an executive session.
Yes, ma'am. And so are you suggesting that 8:15 would be too late?
Well, I don't know what's going to be on the executive session, but that seems very late.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Cox. Okay, well, that being the case, I would like to start us off on the discussion with regard to the chair, vice chair versus chair, co-chair structure, potentially in the bylaws. And I will just start that discussion off and, say that the first draft that I put to the commission had a chair, vice chair structure. And there was some, I believe some commissioners have a perspective that they might prefer a chair, co-chair structure. I would argue that the chair, vice chair structure is a superior structure primarily because it creates kind of a clear and consistent path, a path I perceive as of more accountability and an easier structure to follow. That such a structure in practice tends to be more transparent and easier to follow for those that are, perhaps new to understanding city government, new to understanding the commission. I would argue that an alternative structure, a co-chair structure, can develop kind of a, soft power structure, a hidden power structure, wherein individuals might kind of go chair shopping if chairs disagree on agendas or subject matter or something like that. So I would argue that the chair, vice chair structure is superior in that it is generally more transparent and I believe does serve an equitable purpose in making that structure transparent and obvious to everyone. And that's my primary comment right now.
So in the chair, vice chair model, your concern is that another commissioner would want something to be on the agenda or have a topic for discussion and feel that the chair might not be interested in that, so they would go to a co-chair. In the chair, vice chair model, they would just go to the chair and the chair would say no, and that would be it.
Well, I think I see.
Because I think that's transparent. I agree with that. I also think it would be transparent as professionals to be able to send an email to a chair or a vice chair or two co-chairs and have both people be included and have their statements heard.
So I would argue that if the issue is, well, can a chair say simply no to an agenda item? I would say that that could be remedied with a piece of the bylaws that simply mandates that the chair put something on for an agenda if it's suggested. With the co-chair model, I don't know that that solves that problem. I would argue that it potentially compounds it in that there's no central place to hold account to if an agenda item is offered to one chair or not the other, or to both chairs. Can both chairs get together and decide that they don't want to have an agenda item from somebody else? So I would argue that the co-chair model doesn't necessarily meet that concern, and that concern, I think, is valid. Could be met with, a line in the bylaws simply mandating that an agenda item offered by a commissioner be put on the agenda.
Okay. I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with the semantic differences there. It doesn't really matter to me if someone is called vice chair or co-chair. I think more to Karen's point, my issue might be just with the duties they're in. In my limited experience here, it seems like there is an overwhelming responsibility for the chair, and that's probably too much for one person, and that it would be a lot more, that perhaps we would function better as a commission if those duties were split up, and if we had clear designations in our bylaws that said, this is what the chair does and this is what the vice chair does, versus two people with a different set of skills and abilities choosing amongst themselves what they want to do. That seems to me like professional adults could figure that out, and there probably wouldn't be a lot of pandering for specific agenda items. That's my experience here, is that probably we just need people who can, whether they're co-chairs or a vice chair and a chair, being able to commit more time instead of it all being reliant on one person, transparent or not.
Sure. And Commissioner Cox? Commissioner Cox, you have your hand up?
Sorry, yes. Like, it seems to me that that maybe misstated or misunderstood what the proposed language is. And what I believe the proposed language is, and what I suggested twice in the goings back and forth, was that it be either chair and vice chair or co-chairs. And I know that for Shakuntala Rao and myself, being co-chairs worked wonderfully. Before us, on the previous commission, there were co-chairs, and it worked really great. And I think in some situations, if you have someone that you're can work well with, that co-chairs could work out really great. In some cases, if you don't have that, then maybe just a chair or vice chair would work out better. But the proposal that the Commissioner Paul suggested, and that I asked for in my text to you, and then again in my email to you, is that both options be available, or either option. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Cox. Commissioner Paul?
Thank you. So I just, thank you very much, Commissioner Cox. You took a lot of the words out of my mouth. That is, to a large degree, what I was going to say is that I think it's important to keep in mind that bylaws, while they can be amended at any time, the idea is for them to be a lasting document and to take as many contingencies into account as possible. This document, I think, should be flexible enough to allow for possible changes in governance. And I would agree with you, Commissioner Cox, having observed the Police Commission over many years now, that there have been a number of cases where there have been co-chairs, and I think that they have found ways to divide up the responsibility and to do it in a way that really worked. It doesn't work all the time. It may not work for the next 5 years. Who knows? But the opportunity should exist. And that is why I had said, or co-chair if so deemed by the commission. If the commission doesn't deem it so and they want a chair, well, that's okay too. I'm not aware of the police commission having a vice chair. I think the last time was probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, or 5 years ago or so, that there was a vice chair as well. But if one works better than the other at the time, then the opportunity should exist.
Thank you, Commissioner Paul.
So and I just want to make sure I understand the proposed model here. When the commission votes, they decide if people are running for chair and vice chair and or co-chairs? And then how it's written in the bylaws, section 7 duties of chair and 8 duties of vice chair, does the section 8 just go away because it's covered in the top section, co-chairs?
If you're asking me, I would say, and that actually is something that I did not put in there, of course, because the duties of the vice chair are just simply effectively to sit in for the chair.
Yeah.
If there's no vice chair, then there's no need for, at
So-
that time. Obviously, if there's just 2 co-chairs, then you don't need a vice chair. If there's a way to say that in a way that's
Duties
better.
of the chair, if applicable? Like,
Yes,
I don't know.
if
Okay.
applicable, if there is a vice chair.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if that seemed a little bit redundant to say it that way. But of course, if you have a better suggestion, I'm happy to hear it. I'm happy to hear it.
Okay, so there's been there are several issues brought up. If I may, I'm going to turn first to Commissioner Genorio, and I took some notes, so tell me if I'm misremembering. So, I hear what you're saying in terms of like, if you're professional adults, you should be able to work it out. I tend to agree that should be the case. It's been my experience with humans that frequently doesn't happen, or certainly not as much as we would like in a perfect world. And so, I do tend to, both in drafting and in, governmental structure, I do tend to think that to the extent that a body can, create bylaws that are clear, replicable, and take away as much of that potentiality as possible, I tend to think that's a good thing. And because I worry sometimes that just because, I tend to think that we should draft for the commission that's not us, right? That we can't envision what the interactions will be like. And I know with this commission, just from my historical review, there have been times when it has gotten along very well, and there have been times when there have been significant personality difficulties. And, as this is, hopefully bylaws that are workable, I really hope that we all want them to be workable without us in it. I would argue that, the chair-vice chair structure is superior in that regard. But to your point, and I think this goes to the co-chair too, I think that, regardless of which structure, I think it is really makes sense to lay out, what the roles of the chair and vice chair are, or what the roles of 2 co-chairs may be, pretty explicitly, like a co-chair 1 and co-chair 2, however you want to call it, so that it is more transparent. And Commissioner Paul, to your end, to Commissioner Cox's point, if the commission, And I would argue that whether you pick a co-chair or you pick a vice chair, that it is more structurally transparent and I think more consistent to say it's one or the other, and then allow the commission to modify it potentially on a 2/3 vote in terms of amending the bylaws later on. Just because I think that, you know, structural consistency is very important in terms of what other members could expect, what other members of the public could expect if they were just to look at the website and say, okay, well, how is this structured? Is this a co-chair system or is this a vice chair system? So I would argue that, you know, it behooves us and the public to pick one or the other. That said, I think if the commission does want to have more flexibility such that that structure could change, you know, I think there are ways to structure that in the bylaws with if-then conditionality. You know, we've already, I think, set up, even in the draft, I don't think there was any objection to essentially a yearly chair, vice chair vote. I don't see, if the commission wants to have, you know, the extra flexibility to change it year on year, then I would say that, you know, that is doable in language because we've already got the time that, you know, theoretically that the individuals are voted on. Theoretically, the commission could vote on that structure every year at the same time and decide for that year how it will be structured with, and then if-then conditions can move you around between sections pretty easily. But again, I would argue against that because I think the consistency of having one structure that can be, you know, easily assumed by a member of the public or other commissioners just getting on the website, want to see the bylaws, see what they say, what's the structure, that, you know, picking one or the other now and simply allowing any modification by amendment in a 2/3 vote would be a superior path.
Okay, maybe could we just get a quick reading from everybody's initial feelings if they're more towards chair, vice chair, or co-chairs?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. How would y'all, could we straw poll it or should we just vote on it?
Let's just straw poll it.
Okay.
See what everybody's feeling and if we have consensus or not.
Okay, sure, yeah, I'll just start from my right, Commissioner Paul.
So what do you,
Okay, well, I guess we'll start here. Should we start with the binary of the chair co-chair model, or the chair co-chair versus the chair vice chair model? Is that a good binary to start with?
I don't know what the easiest way is. I mean, obviously, I wrote this proposed edit because this is what I felt was a good path forward based on the history of the police commission, and also, if I might add, while I'm not sure that this particular commission has taken on the level and the complexity of additional responsibility that past police commissions have over the last 5 to 7 years, but the amount of work that was done by some past commissions, and certainly Commissioner Cox can speak to this, was significant, very significant. And there was a reason why there were co-chairs. And I think that we don't know if 2 years from now that dynamic may exist. And that is why I think it's a good idea to put it in the way that we have it. So my straw vote would be to include the potential for a co-chair, but also as well, the flexibility to simply have a chair and vice chair.
Okay, so I understand your straw vote is to have the option written into the bylaws to
Yes.
change. Okay.
Yes.
I appreciate that perspective. I would argue, straw poll, obviously, that we maintain a chair-vice chair model and that be the consistent model going forward. Commissioner Genorio?
I'm team co-chairs.
Okay. As a one consistent model with no modification?
Yeah, I think if the co-chairs mutually agree upon one person just being kind of a stand-in for when the other person's sick, that's also fine.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. Hold on one second. Commissioner Fast, I'm just wanted to make some quick notes here, and I'll get right to you. Okay, Commissioner Fast?
Yeah, I'm also team co-chairs. I think it's a really great way to think about how to distribute work as we move forward. And as Commissioner Paul was saying, the uncertainty of potential work and the demand. And so I think having that option allows for a lot of flexibility and capacity building.
Okay, only co-chair? I'm sorry. And so Commissioner Fast, I understand your straw poll to be only co-chair with no modification option to chair, vice chair, correct?
I'm open to chair, vice chair. I guess I'm more pro the co-chair option, but I'm open to both.
Okay, so do you want the chair, vice chair? Do you prefer it written into the bylaws or just left to a potential amendment down the road?
Yeah, that can be written in the bylaws.
Okay. Okay, moving forward, Commissioner Cox, because you're the next one I can see on the screen.
Yes, I'm for the way that Commissioner Paul wrote it in her draft that is published. So offering either chair, vice chair, or co-chairs.
All right, Commissioner Finneran?
I tend to agree with Karen that we should leave it up to future commissions and offer both a chair and a vice chair model.
Okay. All right, so based on the straw poll, it looks like Commissioner Paul, Commissioner Finneran, Commissioner Cox, and Commissioner Fast are all in favor of writing into the bylaws the potential for both a co-chair model and a vice chair model. Is generally consensus that appears to be what it is? Okay. Well, very well. Then I will simply move that we include in the bylaws a model in which a co-chair system or a vice chair system can be selected on a simple majority vote by the commission, and I will suggest that that happen at the same time they elect the co-chairs or the chair, vice chair, and that we structure the bylaws such that it is a conditional if-then statement so that we can kind of separate out the sections that would apply to a co-chair and separate out the sections that may apply to a chair, vice chair. Does that motion make sense to everybody?
Yeah, I think as Karen has it, right?
I mean, I think that sort of is what this
Yeah.
says. You can certainly add in where it says, or chair, if so deemed by a majority vote of the commission. So you could put that in there in that second line of 6.1. For the purposes of not making more red than black on this page, I did not keep writing co-chair every time the word chair was in. That's why I had said or hereinafter co-chairs, because it was just, I thought it would just become way too complicated.
Okay, so from a subject matter standpoint, I'm going to move that we add the co-chair, the option for co-chair model and chair, vice chair model to the bylaws. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 But I guess I'm just trying to understand, when you say a subject matter, do you mean that, so you don't want to go over what the wording is, you want to come up with it.
Well, what I'm really trying to do is get through some of these conceptually
I
in
understand.
a way that is efficient. And because the alternative to me looks like going line by line and having a discussion on every line when we don't have all the red lines or the initial draft posted on Civic Clerk.
So I think so we're going through this for second draft, is what I understand. And then from there can be additional
Okay.
markups before next meeting.
That is my intent.
That way that we don't
Okay.
have 10 copies of previous.
Okay,
Does that that's what I
all
understand it
right.
to be.
Okay. Do you want to go to public comment, or where do you want to go from here?
Well, so what I was going to do was I was going to, is there anyone from the public to comment? It does not appear there is anyone from the public to comment. So what I would do is I will move to include both the co-chair model and the chair-vice chair model into the bylaws. And I understand that there was a vote in the affirmative on that. I believe every commissioner voted aye, except myself. I'll be honest with that. So that carries. And so we'll include that in the next draft of the bylaws.
I apologize. When I said public comment, I didn't mean public comment at this time. I thought you wanted to try to get the public comment in the bylaws
okay,
done.
okay,
That's what
thank
I
you.
was, that's what I
Okay.
was saying.
All right, I
But
appreciate
but
that.
I'm good with either.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little tired here. Then we have the next subject matter area to discuss would be modifications to public comment. Did anyone, I'll let someone else start that discussion. I remember there were some modifications, but don't remember what the suggestions were.
Well, I think there were, obviously we have one in front of us, but I think there were a couple of different schools of thought on this, and I think Commissioner Cox also has her hand up, is that what I had put on here was that I do think that being able to speak to up to 3 minutes is, 3 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, but when you listen to 3 minutes for a significant period of time, 3 minutes is actually a fair amount of time. But obviously you have to have in bylaws a way to amend that. So it would have to be amended, and I think actually this was in your draft, was unless amended by a majority vote of the commission. And what I had added is just simply a line about the fact that it is the responsibility of the presiding officer. I didn't want to say the chair, because this way it could be chair or co-chair, to monitor all public comment, and that the commission would then give the right to allow that officer to address comments that are disrespectful or not in line with what we hope to accomplish here, which is responsible and reasonable and respectful public engagement. So that was what I had added. But I know that there, I believe, Commissioner Genorio, you did not have that. So I think we need to, weigh that against what you would also encourage, which was, I can't remember now if it was not having a time limit, or I can't remember now. I'm sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry.
Right.
I think that if this is what we're saying about public participation, and I think we've all discussed that we want more of that, that's one of our main focuses, is trying to get people to come and tell us their comments and get involved. And I think either we need more detail, saying if there's someone who's coming with a specific set of skills to share with us, even if it's not its own agenda item, maybe they need 10 or 15 minutes to give us, to read a couple pages, give us a brief presentation. That might be a separate item. If we're only going to have one line item for it, I think we just had Bruce come in and he talked and he had a lot to say, and I was happy to hear what he said. And Robert, I think you dealt with that really well, and I wouldn't want to have a big timer up there making him feel uncomfortable. That to me doesn't breed inclusion. it doesn't breed that, I think we can talk to someone and let them know if they're being disrespectful or they've had enough time. Having something that is significantly more time, 10 minutes, and then we can cut somebody off. If we have an inordinate number of people coming to speak on a topic, then we could cut it down to 2 or 3 minutes. But since it doesn't seem like in any recent past we've had that problem, maybe we don't need to create a solution for a problem we don't have. That's my feeling.
Thank you. Commissioner Cox, did you have a comment earlier?
Well, it's not like City Hall. It's not like the city council, right? So it's like a lot of times they'll have so many people that want to give their input. But I agree with what Julia was just saying, that, you know, in all the time that I've been here, we're just so thankful that anybody shows up at all to talk, that we've sort of given them free rein to talk as much as they feel like they need to, which usually ends up being 3 to 5 minutes, and that's been fine. So I kind of agree that we're searching for a solution to a problem that really doesn't seem to exist in this commission. It could in the future, and maybe if 20 people show up to speak, that the chair could just say, okay, so since there's so many, that there's going to be a time limit, something like that.
My specific fear, because I've seen it happen in other committee meetings, is that somebody comes in with like a really serious issue. Like if somebody wanted to come in here and make a complaint to us about an experience that they had, and then there's a big timer that goes up with 3 minutes and we have to stop them talking about a traumatic experience to have a vote. Like, I think none of us want to do that, and I think that having that unnecessary procedure in there is unnecessary, I guess, compared to just having there be some language about it being up to the discretion of that specific meeting.
So, if I may, and Commissioner Hall, I tend to agree with you about setting a expected timeline, be it 3 minutes, be it 5 minutes, whatever. At least for consistency, for transparency, so people can know, have an expectation of how long they can talk. I do have some concerns with the language that you put in with regard to, you know, the presiding officer, be it chair, whatever, policing speech that is quote-unquote disrespectful, personal to a member of the commission, department, or other members of the public, or runs counter to responsive public engagement, mainly because that, I think, could put the presiding officer in a position of policing speech in a way that might, you know, run afoul of the First Amendment, is, you know, certainly very subjective. And I worry that that could, you know, cause additional difficulty, though if I understand the thrust of it correctly, I think there is something to be said for, you know, making sure someone doesn't get up there and just start spouting obscenities for, you know, 5 minutes. So, you know, I don't know exactly what the fix for that would be. I would maybe suggest, you know, looking at maybe some tighter, like some sort of tighter language that allows the, you know, for a set amount of time, maybe a little longer than 3 minutes, but the ability for the commission to, you know, stop a speaker and take a vote on, you know, whether or not, you know, like the person comes and starts spouting obscenities, like some minimum level of ability either of the commission or the person presiding to maintain order. Would that sort of language be, exploring that sort of language be acceptable to the commission?
I'm amenable to that, and what you had in there, Karen, along the lines of what City Council does. If somebody says, Karen, you're a bad person, or yells some racial epithets, they're cut off. Maybe they use colorful language otherwise, and that's okay, but there's really clear things that people are not allowed to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious as to how, like, beyond like enumerating that, you talk about, you know, and I was just thinking, when you said, you know, somebody, you know, saying, you know, you're a bad person, I tend to believe that, of course, you know, Commissioner Paul has, you know, certainly been in these forums much longer than I have, but I do tend to believe there is some civic value in being able to come and tell your officials or commission members that they are in fact bad people.
I would respectfully disagree with that.
Sure.
I don't think that it is, I think it is beyond what is acceptable. You can certainly say that I think the decision you made is bad. I do not think it is appropriate to come in here and say you are a bad person. And there's a big difference between those two things. If you want to have people serving in public office and you want people to volunteer to be on a volunteer commission, there needs to be some ability to shut someone down when they say something that is inappropriate. And you can put that in the bylaws, or you can say as a group of people that are trying to do the right thing, you can certainly, say, we want to just make sure that the chair, when there are members of the public here, that the chair lays out some ground rules. And that is done in other forums. Again, when it comes to making bylaws, I think it's hard to plan for everything. But having watched the police commission over a long period of time, there have been times where things have gotten very personal and people resign. They don't want to do it anymore. And that is not what we're here for. We're all here just, and this is what I had said at the very beginning in the guiding principles. And by the way, those principles came from our commission retreat. Those are all in, all of those guiding principles that were added in red line came as a direct quotes from the retreat. That we should all assume the best in one another, and that the public should assume the best in all of us. And if we are going to allow for people to come here and say whatever they want, I think that runs counter to what we are here for.
And I can appreciate that. I think there is a difference between controlling speech for organizational purposes, time, place, and manner, like the Supreme Court has talked about. And I think there's a difference between that and, starting to finally demarcate what is appropriate and what is not. I think this discussion kind of articulates the point in that I tend to think it's appropriate for someone to come in and say, I don't like you, I think you're a bad person, and leave it at that. I mean, is it personally not awesome for me? Sure. But I tend to think that that is an appropriate use of a public forum time. Some people may agree, some people may disagree, but I am very hesitant to police that or put us in a position of policing that type of speech if it's not disruptive. And I certainly, appreciate your position on that, and I think it's a good one for a kind of a straw poll. But I do think that there is guidance both from, the federal Supreme Court. There's probably guidance from, or older, probably not now, but there's probably guidance from the federal government or the state, for that matter, on, what would constitute protected speech in this forum and what would not. And, I would suggest something, language along the lines more directed towards, making sure things aren't disruptive and the business can move along than trying to make, determinations on what may or may not be appropriate at an individual time.
And that's fine with me, but I do think that something should be said.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, this was something I wrote out. If people have a better way that is more general and more in line with bylaws per se, I have no challenge with that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further comments in that regard?
Well, I do think that there is a difference, potentially a difference of approach. Is there a time limit or isn't there a time limit? So we sort of have to take I think, probably to get ourselves to someplace, tonight would be to decide at least that. And then if you want to come up with, and I actually thought what you had said about something in a way that is not disruptive, if you want to reword that, as I say, I have no challenge with that. But I think at least to be able to get through, and some people may not agree with that. Some people may not feel that that should be in there at all. But as far as the time is concerned, I think we probably could at least get that far this evening.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I tend to agree. That's why I was just asking if there were any other comments broadly.
Could I just read what I put in that section for time limits, and maybe we can have that as a consideration before we go to a straw poll? So this is from the original draft, not from your draft, Karen. During public forum, members of the public shall be invited to speak for a time befitting their issue, typically 5 minutes. The commission may allow longer time for individuals representing groups or may shorten times to accommodate a larger number of speakers.
I don't have any problem with that.
So that was just my general comment of trying to put some leniency in there with time, but kind of having a general metric of 5 minutes in difference to your 3 minutes.
Okay.
So I don't want this to be a back and forth between the three of us, because we do have others that are here. Personally, I do agree with getting rid of the word permitted and invited. I think that is an excellent idea. I would go along with what you had done. I just think that 5 minutes is a really long time, and if that were 3, I'd go along with what you had said, and we could probably call it a day.
Okay. That's great for me, too.
I'm only one person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just saying I'm amenable to that.
All right. So as I understand, just for the first round of straw, let me make sure, let me just be very clear about this. Are there any other comments on this particular issue right now? Okay. Doesn't look like it. So
could I ask a question?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Cox.
So I would just say that the 3 minutes seems short to me only because of the number of times I've testified in front of committees in Montpelier. And a lot of times they'll have a 3-minute time limit. When you're trying to talk about something that's complex, 3 minutes seems very short. And so I can see it from both angles, but I'd also be happy with what Tessa said. But I guess I do want people to at least aspire to be polite and civil in their discussion. And so I think that some of Karen's language was useful in that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna start with just the binary of as a starting point to kind of straw poll it as either 3 or 5 minutes as an initial. If that's all right with everybody, Commissioner Paul, do you have a preference?
I'm fine with calling it even at 4, but I would start with 3.
Okay, I would also start with 3.
I'm ambivalent to what the number is.
Okay.
I would just perhaps like there to be some language in there that it's flexible.
Right, and
That's more-
that was
yeah.
what I was moving to next.
Both, team both.
Yeah, okay, very well. Commissioner Cox?
Team both.
Okay. Commissioner Fast?
Same.
Okay, Commissioner Finneran?
Me too.
Okay. Okay, so 4 minutes with, and my guess is that, just tell me if you disagree, I believe that we're all probably in favor of, generally, as a straw poll matter, generally all in favor of the kind of modification language that Commissioner Genorio has offered to modify that time in an appropriate way. And is that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I will
Do you
move.
want to ask the other?
I'm sorry.
I just don't want it to feel like, I just don't want the others that are on Zoom to feel like we're, the three of us are doing this. I mean, I don't know if you wanted to ask. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Watching. Okay, is there any additional comment to that online? Okay, seeing none, I will move that, I will move that we adopt into the bylaws a time-appropriate, we just have to have a number to start off with. So
Yep,
I'm just going
invited
to,
for time to speak, befitting their issue, typically 4 minutes.
4 minutes? Okay,
And then we
great.
may allow longer or shorter times depending on group.
Perfect. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.
I mean, I would take it even one step further. I think the language that you came up with was fine. And in the interest of time and making life a little bit easier, I would go along with what has already been proposed.
Okay, thank you. Now, the third subject matter area were the duties of the chair, and I see we're at 8:20 p.m. I said we'd call that we'd
Yeah.
look at this at 8:15. I apologize, I went 5 minutes over. We are at 8:20 p.m. I would personally move that we table this third subject matter area, just mainly because I'm tired. But I would move that we table that because we do have the executive committee coming up and we do have some commendations tonight. So I would move that we would table that third subject matter area of duties of chair to the next meeting. And Commissioner Paul, I see you had your hand up.
Thank you. So I would make a motion that we do as you had suggested, that we go now to commendations. Chief Burke has been waiting for a while, and that we do the commendations and then go into executive session. If it is possible for Channel 17, we are not. Could I just simply ask a question of the chair of the chief?
Sure. Yeah, please.
Chief, the executive session, when we come out of executive session, are you expecting some action from us?
No.
Okay, so thank you. So if that is the case, would it be possible to just simply allow Channel 17 to do whatever needs to be done so that you might be able to leave? Okay, all right, well, maybe we can try to figure that out in a way that is amenable to everybody. But, so my motion would be, following up on what you had said, to just simply go now, close out this item. We will revisit it on the 24th of March, and go to commendations, and then a motion to go into executive session, which I don't have the language for, but I imagine somebody does.
Second.
I've got it pulled up. Second.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, you said, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, the ayes have it. We will table this matter till the 24th. Thank you for all of your discussion on that, Commissioners. Very much appreciated. And we will move into commendations. These are commendations for the various officers. I will read these aloud. Number one is Dear Sital, on behalf of Kids Safe Collaborative and the Child Protection and Family Support Team, I would like to express my deep appreciation for your exceptional support during our meeting. Your role in providing transportation and additional interpretation support was absolutely central to making this meeting possible. Without your involvement, the parents' ability to attend, participate, and feel safe and supported would have been significantly diminished. You did far more than help someone get to a meeting and sit next to them. You ensured that they arrived feeling welcomed, accompanied, and emotionally cared for. Throughout the meeting, your presence and support were essential. The calm reassurance and emotional grounding you provided to the parent allowed them to fully engage in a difficult and vulnerable conversation. Your ability to recognize what was needed in the moment, comfort, compassion, clarity, and advocacy, made a meaningful difference for everyone involved. It was clear that many members of the team looked to you for guidance, and they followed the example you set in how to best support the family. Although the actions you took fall within your professional role, the way you carried them out was truly exemplary. You demonstrated the highest standard of what a community support liaison can be, a trusted partner, a cultural and emotional bridge, and a steady source of strength for families and professionals alike. Your contributions transformed the tone and effectiveness of this meeting. Without you, we would have faced greater logistical barriers, emotional uncertainty, and significantly less connection. It was an honor to work with you during this meeting. Please accept this formal letter of thanks as recognition of your extraordinary commitment, your compassion, and your vital role in supporting both the family and the team. With sincere appreciation, Megan Masterson. Number 2, kudos to quote-unquote Dwayne, an outstanding member of the Burlington Police Department. On January 8th, I was cleaning snow at my residence. The vehicle stopped and questioned if I would like help. Dwayne introduced himself, picked up a shovel, and cleared snow down to the pavement. Then inquired if I had salt for the walkway. No visible wings, but I felt God wink. Seniors aren't neglected by this gentleman. He made my day. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my appreciation. Jane Fitzpatrick. Number 3, dear Kyle, thank you so much for taking me on a ride-along. I'm sorry it took a while to send this note. Unfortunately, the city email servers weren't communicating properly for several weeks with BPD emails. It's so helpful for me to see how our officers are staffed and supported and what you are facing every night. The impact of substance use and mental health are so clear. Thank you for staying in the thick of this with us. Please reach out anytime with issues or ways I can help. Evan Litwin. And then we have, and I believe that concludes the commendations. So thank you very much, Chief. We really appreciate the work of you and your officers. All right, and now I will, and I always get this wrong, I will motion to adjourn and send us into executive session, and I would move that we make a finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place this public body or a person involved at substantial disadvantage. To wit, I believe we are going into an executive session for a disciplinary issue, and I believe that manifestly would put the subject of that disciplinary issue at a disadvantage. And so I would move that we adjourn and move into executive session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Those opposed, hearing none, we are in executive session and subsequently adjourned. Thank you.